Hi, everybody. You are all very welcome to our Flipping the Script webinar. My name is Barbara Degnan and I'm the Skills and Talent Development Manager at the Cultural and Creative Industry SkillNet. I am here alongside my colleague, Sean Smith. For those who don't know, CCIS is an amalgamation of the former animation, screen and immersive tech SkillNets, and our remit has expanded to include training and supports across the wider arts and culture sector since 2023. You can find out all about us on creativeskillnet.ie. We're really excited for this evening's webinar, which has come together with the support of a huge amount of different people. So firstly, we'd like to thank our co-funders, Coimisiún Meán, and our partners on the initiative, Animation Ireland, Cartoon Saloon and Turnip Duck. And a big thanks also to Shelley Bowden, who is a digital accessibility consultant, and she offered some really great advice on how we advertised and presented the webinar. So all of these folks have been instrumental in helping us develop the format and engage with the speakers. On the speakers, we're really, really grateful to them for giving up their time and hopefully inspiring you with their own stories of how they got their start and how they continue to work in the industry today. And finally, we want to say a massive thank you to Dee Roycroft, who is the captain of our ship this evening and who will also close the session, hopefully if we have time, with a writing exercise to help get the creative juices flowing. So Dee is an amazing writer, script editor and teacher, so we're really lucky to have her. Dee is going to mention 2 courses that will be advertised in the coming weeks that are a follow-on from this webinar. So further details of those, including links to apply, will be sent to everyone who signed up for this session. So keep an eye out for those. So that's it from me. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy. Dee, I'll pass over to you now.
Thanks a million, Barbara. Thank you. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Like Barbara said, we're so excited for the speakers that we have here this evening. So welcome to Flipping the Script. This is an introductory webinar to writing for animation. My name is Dee Roycroft. I'm a writer and a facilitator, and what I'd like to do is start off by just very quickly taking you through the format of the evening, and then I will kick off with our keynote speaker. We're recording tonight's event and it will be available on request to everyone registered to attend. So we're going to kick off with a keynote by the wonderful writer Carol Walsh, and she's going to talk to us about her route to writing for children's animation. And then after her talk, there'll be a short opportunity for you to ask questions, and we're going to have these opportunities throughout the evening, so you'll have plenty of chances to engage, and you can ask your question through the chat box on the screen. Following Carol, a Cartoon Saloon producer Kiva Cassidy will explain how a script gets made into an actual episode. Then we'll have a panel discussion with 4 amazing writers and editors who all work in different ways within the industry, all at different stages of their careers. And then we'll have a final Q&A at that point, before going into hopefully our last event of the evening, which hopefully we'll get to, which is a short creative writing session just to whet your appetites. But without further ado, let me introduce to you the wonderful Carol Walsh, who's going to deliver our keynote this evening. Carol is a neurodivergent comedy writer from Athy in Kildare. She has written on cartoons like Dodo, Fia's Fairies and Flicks. She is the head writer on Colossal Jane, an animated action comedy created by Rock Espinette. Carol scripts the children's true crime comedy podcast Serial. Her pre-teen comedy drama, Louise Lives Large, will air on RTE in March 2024. She's developing an adult animated comedy called The Shift with Hat-Trick Productions and Netflix. And along with the writer Jodie O'Neill, Carol received Screen Ireland screenplay development funding to write a feature film titled Bold. Carol and Jodie are also developing Empowered with Little Moon Animations. And Empowered is an animated fantasy about neurodiverse teens trying to fit in while battling the forces of evil. Carol lives in Dublin with her son and partner. Carol, I am so excited for you to talk to us this evening. Welcome, and thank you so much. Take it away. You're muted. I know, it always happens.
Every single time, every time, guys.
Every time.
As everyone will see, I'm not particularly suave or seamless, so you'll have to bear with me, guys. But thank you so much for asking me here today to talk to you about getting your start and working in animation and working as a writer. When Dee asked me, I kind of felt that there were a million other choices that she could have gone with. But I'm really happy that she did, because talking to people about getting their start in the industry from a variety of backgrounds at whatever stage in life is something I'm really passionate about. Just to tell you a little bit of my background, I wanted to be a writer my whole life, like a lot of us. I kind of was making up stories from the time I was teeny tiny. Stories or lies, as they're called, when you're really, really little. And my son is now doing similar stories in our house, which is loads of fun. But I always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to tell stories. I just had no clue, no idea really how you went about doing that or how you made that a job. And like a lot of people, when I finished school, I went to college. It wasn't a good fit. I wasn't a good fit for that. I, failed out of college. I went and worked in an office. And unfortunately, in my mid-20s, I had a mental health crisis. I wasn't very well. And I kind of came to a point in my life where, this sounds like it's the X Factor sad story. It's like the violins bit. But I came to a point in my life where it was like a now or never, really. It was something had to change. So as mad as it seems, trying to write for a living made as much sense as anything else, to see if I could kind of improve my life, improve my mental health. I know that what you're thinking, like, what type of a lunatic goes into the arts to improve their mental health? But actually, bizarrely, trust me, it actually helped. In terms of getting a start, I approached Fair City. I sent them an email. It's so funny. You hear stories all the time about people who, the usual rumor of who do you know in RT and who are you related to. I knew no one. I was related to no one. I sent them an email randomly out of the blue saying, how does someone go about working for your show? And they replied, which is lovely and insane, actually, because I'd tried my hand at writing a few scripts, but I had no credentials, no background. And I got talking to Lena Byrne in Fair City, and she read my script, and she was very good. She was very decent about it. And I think the writing was, it showed promise, but it wasn't quite there. They stayed in touch with me for years, which is just so decent of them, I think. So I eventually went and worked in Fair City in the story room. I wrote a couple of scripts. I wrote a couple of really bloody shite scripts for Fair City. I think I have no problem saying that. I'm sure they have no problem saying that. My heart was always more in comedy and in animation and in children's content, but I couldn't have asked for a better start. I couldn't have asked for meeting better people. And that was my start. Now, many different people will get different ins to the industry. So what I'd say to all of you is, look for things like this, for things like SkillsNet, look at everything on animationireland.ie, look for every type of funding that you can. And I would also say enter competitions. I got really lucky. I went for the BBC Writers' Room, and I got that. That was a really good boost. I entered a comedy competition in the UK called the Funny Women Awards, and I got that, and that was a good boost. And then there were little things like there's a female pilots club, so you send them a comedy pilot and they put it on in the Comedy Museum in Soho with these really, really great actors, and that was a really good start. Also, in terms of beginning, moving from Fair City to children's, my first animation script I got because Richie Conroy, who I met working on Fair City, sent me an email saying, is this something you'd be interested in? I think you'd be really good at it. And I bit the hand off, and I was like, yes, please. I have always wanted to do this. I've always loved cartoons and animation, and kind of it took off from there, which is great. I gave a talk with a youth group quite recently, and they were amazing kids, but they were kind of saying to me, they were like, okay, so how do we get started? And I was saying that to them and they were like, that's great. It sounds like things are going well for you now. And I was like, absolutely. And they were like, when did you start? And I was like, 10 years ago. And their faces were just like, 10 years. So what I will say to you is it doesn't take everyone 10 years. You guys will all be much, much quicker than me. I was a slow entry to all of this and a late entry to all of this. I'm going to like run through things really quickly because I have notes and there's loads of them. But firstly, people ask me quite a lot about agents and if you need an agent. It is a matter of scale. At the start, I would say no, you don't. Agents actually don't get you a huge amount of work. They will make introductions to you. They'll introduce you to different animation houses, different production companies, but you kind of get a lot of your own work. And especially when you've been working a while, quite a lot of your work will come from the people you know, from someone kind of sending you an email saying, I think you'd be right for this script. An agent as well takes a really long time to get. So I know phenomenally talented people that have never needed one. And they get a lot of their own work. Why would they give over a certain percentage of their income to an agent? I will say it becomes more of an issue when you start developing your own shows or when you start maybe working outside Ireland. Agents are great. They are the weirdest people. They love contracts. So if there's a huge contract full of legal jargon, that's just a good night in for them. They are just happy out to read through that. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't go near anything practical ever. Don't understand it. My brain will fritz. So for me, having an agent is good, but it took me a really long time to find one. And I have to say, I'm kind of glad that I didn't have one earlier in my career because I just have been giving them part of my income for, working in the Fair City Story Room and stuff like that. And you don't really, once you're kind of in there, that's kind of self-managed. Don't know if that makes any sense. The next thing I want to do is talk about kind of writing a script. And this is, you have to bear with me, this is a bit ramshackle. But if you are a pen for hire, a lot of your work is going to be writing scripts on existing shows, children's shows. A lot of them are preschool shows. So I thought we could kind of very briefly chat about how you'd go about that. So generally, if you get talking to the creator or the head writer of a show and they are interested in you pitching for that show, you'll send them an idea. If they like the idea, you will maybe write a springboard, which is like a paragraph, and that goes into a one-pager. So then you're just kind of writing out what happens in an episode. The one-pager might need to turn into a beat sheet, which might need to turn into a draft. Every show kind of has a different process, but it'll basically be, there's a small lead in from, this is my idea, and now I'm writing a first draft for this cartoon. So I thought the best way to do this would be to have a speculative show that we're looking at. So I have made up a show called Elephants in Space. So we, the writer, are pitching for Elephants in Space. Elephants in Space, by the way, is a preschool show for 5 and 6 year olds. It's not real, but it's a big, silly, kind of a bluey type show, and it's very sweet, and it's about elephants in space. I mean, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, that would be a huge spaceship because elephants are large. But I didn't think about that when I was coming up with this earlier. So anyways, if we're pitching for Elephants in Space, we need to think about ideas for episodes. So I have 3 ideas here. One, the Astrophants, which again sounded better earlier, land on Planet Bump, and 2 of our heroes aren't getting on. They try to avoid each other, but everyone in Planet Bump bumps into each other constantly. Can they put their fight aside and just be friends? 2, the Astrophants. What? Astrophants is an absolutely terrible name, I'm sorry. But the Astrophants catch their first space cold and the ship is inundated with a case of cosmic sneezes. 3, I'm not saying Astrophants again, the astronauts find a scary monster on Planet Bob and set about capturing it. But when Captain Elephant spends more time with the monster, she realizes that the creature is kind and funny. So generally what would happen is you send these 3 ideas and the powers that be will say, okay, well, the first one, you know, sounds a bit aggro, so that's not in the grammar of the show. They might say the second one, the space cold and the sneezes is a bit COVID. We don't really want that, so that's not for us. But they might say the third one is a nice idea. So then you take that idea and you'll turn it into maybe a paragraph or a 1-pager at that stage. So we're going to do a beginning, middle, and an end. We'll find out how they went to Planet Blob, what the scary monster looks like, find out a little bit more about Captain Elephant over the course of the episode, and put in like a little bit of comedy and back and forth, and eventually leave our show with Captain Elephant having a lovely time with the monster, realizing it's not a monster, it's just a creature he didn't know, and it's a new friend. So you do that with a 1-pager, and you get notes back, and the notes will ask for changes. They could be big, they could be small. One of the biggest pieces of advice I'd give you guys is notes are inevitable and they're fine. And it is not a slight on you as a writer for not having everything perfect, because everything you send when you're writing is a blueprint. It's the start. And we're all making this thing together. So there are going to be changes along the way. That's really normal and it's completely fine. Once you change your 1-pager and you go back and forth on that, then you might need to do a beat sheet, or you might be onto your draft. That's when you're going to be working very closely with your script editor, which brings me very neatly onto the next section, which is notes about notes. So every good writer, literally everything you've ever seen on TV, every podcast that's a fiction podcast, every book you read that is a beautiful piece of writing, that is obviously a lot of that is down to the writer, but so much of that is also down to a decent script editor. They are worth their weight in gold. I mean, it's like having a co-captain who has the best interests of you as a writer, the best interests of the show, the best interests of the head writer. They are taking in all of those different streams at once, and they are focusing on getting the best script possible. And also making sure that you have a pleasant time writing and it matches everything else in the series. And, you know, they are co-captains and they kind of work with your best interests. Also, I think I'm not a script editor. I couldn't be. I'm not diplomatic enough, frankly speaking. Like with a script editor, they're thinking in terms of the directors, the producers, the streamer, the broadcaster, educational consultant, distributors, all of those voices aligned on one page, which sounds insane. It sounds a little bit like a UN council, but it does work out. And with a good script editor, you, the writer, are protected and you will get your script at the end of it. And you'll be able to watch it and it'll be great. That obviously is a very positive and glowing things. You can have the odd kind of blip with a script where maybe it doesn't turn out exactly as you'd like it, but I would say mostly everything kind of works out hunky-dory when you have a really good script editor. Script editors are, not all heroes have capes. Here's something that I kind of wanted to say to you guys in terms of communicating as a neurodivergent writer. I can't speak for everyone with autism or everyone on the spectrum, but with me, I do find that I have gaps in communications. I don't do well with unknown variables. So the type of note that would come back where someone says, just have fun with it. You get that type of note sometimes. Say if it's our elephants in space and the note came back being like, this isn't quite there, just have fun with it. I would not know how to fix that script. So for me, the important thing to do is to figure out how best you communicate. If you do best on a phone, then a call with your script editor. If email works for you, then talk to them over email. Email doesn't work for me because it doesn't have tone, and I kind of like to talk to script editors so I can hear their voice, so I can pick up the tone. Zoom can work really well for some people. I'm a fraidy cat. I go with a phone call when I can, and just talk to them. Just kind of say, when you say just have fun with it, you know, what specifically do you mean? Does it need more humor? Does it need more heart? Do I need to change the story? And just talk to them about it and tease out how to change your script going into the next draft, because it will save you a lot of hassle in the long run. All of this is very dependent as well on you being a pen for hire, as in you're writing a script on someone else's show. There's a big difference between being a show creator and being a pen for hire. There's pros and cons to both, and I think it's good to kind of figure out what makes you comfortable, what type of writer you are. You could be both. I do both. But just to kind of flesh it out briefly, pen for hire, you get to work on loads of shows. You can work on loads of shows at once. There's a great sense of variety. When you're done with a script, you're done. It's gone. It's not your issue. The money is already there. You know, you're not applying for funding. It's just you write your script, and then you get paid. Perfect. It's great. Your script is your responsibility, but the entire show is not your responsibility. When you develop your own stuff, it's a little bit different. It's your world, your character, your sensibility. It's amazing, but also it can be a little bit trickier because you might end up doing quite a lot of development for free in the early stages of it, or for little or no money. There's a lot of applying for funding. There's a lot of tweaking your idea to fit the sensibility of the broadcaster or the streamer. It's that lovely thing about when you're writing a script on someone else's show and it's gone. That doesn't happen when it's your own stuff. It kind of lingers and malingers. It's there for a while. And yet, I will say try both, because for me, when you're developing your own stuff and it takes off, it is just the best feeling in the world. It's unbeatable. So I'm going to take you through a whistle stop tour of developing your own show next. Am I talking really quickly? I feel like I'm talking really quickly. So
It's perfect.
Sure.
Positive. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're developing a show, it starts off where I have an idea. My idea that I've written down here is crisps in space. Apparently, I was very space obsessed when I was writing this morning. So you have an idea, it's crisps in space. You talk to a production company or an animation house. A few might like it, a few might not. But let's just say it takes off with one company and they really like it. And that's brilliant. Now your idea is in development. A company loves crisps in space. But you have to change your idea. They think that crisps are junk food and it's sending a bad message to a young audience. So all of a sudden you were writing a show called Spuds in Space. Still good, you know, spuds are delicious. You, at this stage, would probably write a pilot and a Bible. They may or may not want to go for funding. It depends. In Ireland, a lot of companies tend to go for funding, and they should do, because the funding is there. So you're writing a pilot, which is really important because it's getting the tone of your show, and a Bible. And in a Bible, you'll have episode ideas, really what the show is about, what the tone of it is, what you're trying to convey, and everything about your characters as well. It'll also have a little bit about who the audience is, what type of a channel or a broadcaster is this idea is suitable for, and kind of all of the bits and pieces and different ideas that you need to bring to a broadcaster or a streamer and say, please buy Spuds in Space. Please let me make my TV show. Luckily for us writers, producers go and, or the lovely owners of animation companies go and sell the thing to your streamer or your broadcaster. You might be in the pitch. They are terrifying. There's no two ways about it. But chances are those early conversations happen between producers and streamers, and you don't even have to be part of it. It's great. you're at home, you're in your pajamas, you're just listening to music and thinking, oh, I just want to make spuds in space. And then, you know, you'll get an email saying, yes, they're interested, but they want to make some changes. And this is another thing I'd say to you. Everywhere in this job is just, nothing is ever stagnant or still, apart from when you're waiting for news. Once a project is on rails and it's running, it is going to change massively, and it will change over time quite a bit. And that's, I mean, that's a good thing, because generally it gets better, which is fantastic. Spuds in space is better than crisps in space, but prepare for the changes. So in this speculative thing, I'm thinking that a streamer has taken this on, but they want more changes. They want to expand the reach of the show. So they're changing it from Spuds in Space to Veg in Space. So now we're making a show called Veg in Space. Really, really fun thing is, if that is your show, the chances are you get to lead a writer's room now, which is the most fun in the entire world. I would not have thought that I would have enjoyed a writer's room. So I would say to any of you that are a little bit shy and find being around groups of people tough, don't discount yourself from being someone who would actually do very well in a writer's room, because when everyone is focused on the work, it's easier than you think. It isn't. Personally, I find socializing in big groups very, very tough, but I find working in a writer's room energetic and good and fun, and it's good work. It's tiring, but it's good. So don't discount yourself from doing it, just if you're a bit more shy, please. From the writer's room, generally you'll give out the scripts to whoever's working on the show. So they go and they do their first drafts. They send their first drafts back to you. You get to read their brilliant scripts based on your idea, which is the most fun thing in the world. And then you get to write notes back, which is also loads and loads of fun. A lot of it is balancing your instinct versus the requirements of the broadcaster or the streamer. So this is something that I'm dealing with quite a bit at the moment, and it's actually fine in terms of, say, the Netflix show that I'm developing. I don't know if it'll get greenlit or not, but at the moment I find their notes very direct and very helpful, and kind of easy to implement. There hasn't been anything so far where I kind of feel like, how dare you stamp all over my art, damn you to hell. It's all been fine. Maybe a show isn't particularly for you and you kind of want to write features, you want to write a movie, I would implore you to do that. In terms of having a spec script in the industry, it's actually a lot more rare to come across people who have a film script. So if you have a decent film script, that will help you get work. And I would say to you as well, always have the best spec script. When I say spec script, I mean an example of your writing. Find one that you really love, that is just so exemplary of your voice and that you really stand behind, because that's going to be what people read when they're thinking of you as a speculative writer on their own show, or if you are pitching ideas to different animation houses or different production companies. So in terms of features, myself, Dee hit on this earlier, but myself and the lovely writer Jodie O'Neill got some funding last year, and we co-wrote a feature called Bold. And I suppose Bold, one of the early ideas of it was thinking of Little Orphan Annie, and I was like, God, she'd be so much better if she wasn't a wet blanket. Then she'd a bit of crack about her, and it kind of went from there. We had a lot of like kind of Dublin features that we wanted to put into it, Irish humor and kind of a little bit of dark humor, and it was really hard. I find TV is a more natural fit for me than movies, and I think Jodie would be the same, and she's a theatre background as well. But it was amazing, and those kind of learning curves, if you can keep having those throughout your career as well, I think you're very, very lucky, and it's a very good thing. So look for funding. This is another thing that, please learn from my mistakes. When I started out in this job. I thought funding was, it was for a different type of person than me. I thought it was for a very fancy, posh Trinity graduate. This imaginary person I had in my head, which is actually gas now that I think about it. And I didn't apply for funding for many, many years. And that was absolutely ridiculous, because Screen Ireland and the industry is there to foster us as artists, to foster us as writers. The Irish animation industry is an absolute diamond in terms of our economy. You know, you are part of that as a new writer as well. We need your voice and your experience and your stories. Of course, you can look for funding and approach companies and become part of this community. And please, please, please learn from my mistake and don't discount yourself too early. I worry that people do that too often, and it's definitely a mistake I made. So please don't do that. Now, in terms of the main players in Irish animation, I've written this really dodgily, so I'm going to forget people, and then Dee is going to remind me at the end, and that's going to be fantastic. So in terms of Irish animation, I read a thing online saying it's worth over 100 million to the economy each year, and 85% of that is flowing in from abroad. I mean, I just think that that's absolutely outstanding, and we should be so incredibly proud of it. But also, I was just looking at the work that the guys are doing earlier, and I mean, it made me swell up with pride. Just in terms of like, so, you know, the big hitters, you've got like Brian Bagg, in terms of like, obviously we all loved Give Up Your Old Sins and Granny O'Grim, but I have a preschooler, and I looked at all of these shows. I've looked at Storybots and Ada Twist and Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and Bing and Chico Bon Bon, best theme tune ever. Love the Chico Bon Bon theme tune. Peter Rabbit, Octonauts, Cartoon Saloon. I mean, my God, their features are just the most incredible advertisement for creativity in the country. They're just beautiful. They're so well written. I mean, it's gorgeous. Got like Boulder, Amazing World of Gumball, Go Jetters, Danger Mouse. They make Danger Mouse. How could we not be proud of that? Jam, Roy and Little Roy, Jessie and Nessie, Becca's Bunch, Nova Jones when they went live action. Lighthouse Studios. I didn't know that they did the Cuphead show or Bob's Burgers movies until I looked into that earlier, and I was kind of nerding out on it in a big way. Turnip and Duck, I've worked with Turnip and Duck, and the lads are amazing. Obviously they've got Critters TV, Adamtown, Maddie and Triggs, and actually Maddie and Triggs started as a podcast. I would say to you guys as well, don't discount working in other formats like podcasts or live action as well. Just don't say no to any writing experience when you're starting out, because you don't know what's going to set your soul on fire. You don't know what you're going to really love writing until you try it. I sound like I'm recruiting for the army. I really do. I'm so sorry. I love the job and I get excited about it. So then, you know, there's so many other companies. You've got Little Moon, you've got Picture, you've got Telegale, you've got Ping Kong, you've got Daily Madness. I am forgetting loads and loads, but my point is the industry over here is absolutely blossoming with these incredible companies, and they're full of incredible animators, and they need writers. And I think oftentimes, and the panel will be able to help me out with this, I think oftentimes there's tax breaks when people come to Ireland to get their shows animated here. And I think part of that means that a certain amount of the writing staff has to be Irish. So there is work in the industry in a way that, you know, when you get to live action and when you get to adult animation, it gets kind of a little bit tougher. Another thing I wanted to say to you was Animation Dingle. I have heard that Animation Dingle is amazing because you can network with artists and animators and communicate and connect with people in the industry and find out about what's happening in the industry and what's happening next. If, like me, you are a hermit who comes out in hives if you are in a crowded room, don't feel that you always have to go to everything like that. You can kind of communicate with people more one-on-one. However, I will put in the caveat that animators and people who work in the animation industry are just a little bit nicer than a lot of people in the arts. I mean, everyone in the arts is fine, but they're particularly nice. So, you know, it might be worth kind of going to the likes of Animation Dingle, meeting people, seeing what the crack is, and, you know, doing a bit of networking that way. Again, I am going to state networking isn't my thing. So if it's not for you, don't feel bad about that either. In terms of looking to the future, I would really love to see a more synchronicity between the different kind of parts of animation and the different parts of the art. Like, I'd love to see more collaboration between writers and directors and animators and musicians as well, and producers. I think that would be incredibly cool, and I would love, love, love to see more adult comedy being made here, and more adult comedy being made here by Irish creators. Would be, because, you know, I think we're funny. In terms of advice, I'm going to finish off really quickly. This, as I said, this is advice, quality not guaranteed. So take from that what you will. One, create your own water cooler. It can be really lonely when you're at home. So have kind of your group of writers that you can send an email to, or you can send a text to, and you can talk things out. It just makes all the difference. I've said this already, but if you're confused about a note, email, rejection. Yes. So if you get a rejection, and it is a job where there will always be an element of rejection, feel it. Don't kind of make yourself immediately get over it. I take a day to sulk. So, you know, I'll get an email saying this isn't for us, sorry, and I'll feel kind of glum about it for a day, and then I kind of move on. But I find kind of making the time to feel glum almost kind of helps in a way. Never stop being a fan is the next one. Yeah, I think kind of lean into your nerd instincts, because it's an industry that thrives on people being passionate about the medium and passionate about the community. And the more you love it, and the more you love the job and your own work as well, I think the better the chances of you having a really flourishing, happy career. I have probably forgotten a million things, and I've probably been really confusing. But thank you so much for listening to me, guys. Cheers.
Wow, that was brilliant. Hang on.
I went on a bit, sorry.
Can you hear that? I played an applause thing. Damn it, it didn't. I always feel on Zoom, it's the one thing you don't get the sense of like everybody going, yay, well done. So thanks so much, Carol. That was brilliant and really, really comprehensive. You touched on so much stuff there, and it was absolutely perfect. There was loads. Your resilience is really powerful. That was something that really struck me towards the beginning of what you were saying. And it was interesting because you were saying, you know, it took you kind of 10 years, or you were 10 years. And I don't think that's long. I really don't. I think sometimes, and also it's a
I
gender.
didn't think it was long until I was talking to some 17-year-olds who were like, oh my God.
No, but like, you know, at 27, they're still going to be in their part-time job that's turned into a full-time job, going like, you know, as we all were. So I think, yeah, I just think that resilience, and then what you were saying towards the end about, and I loved that idea of making a ritual out of rejection, about like actually going, okay, I need time to decompress from that, and giving yourself space for that. I think that's because rejection is such a huge part of the industry. And I think that for all our successes, for every little thing that helps us climb a rung on the ladder, there's 10, 20, 30 rejection things behind you. And it's really, you just have to kind of acknowledge them. You have to go, there you go. You're standing on a little hill of rejection emails all the time, or just actual tumbleweed, and not even a email to let you know.
I do worse with the tumbleweed. I prefer
Not great. I'm not great with the tumbleweed, I have to say. They take a special kind of, then it'd be more of a violent ritual, I feel, around the tumbleweed than the actual, but that's a whole other conversation. I also was really grateful that you talked about notes, because I think that that's something that I know we're going to talk about a little bit later, maybe in the panel, because notes, it's so collaborative. And that was something I hadn't realized when I started in animation, was how collaborative it is. Before we move on, I just have to quickly, there's a couple of questions here that came in from attendees, if I can just
perfect.
both put them to you. So one is, and this was when you were talking about agents, actually. So this could be useful, because I suppose this would be something that a lot of writers might feel at a certain point. Somebody says, I'm very close to getting into a collaboration with an animation studio to develop a show. Congratulations.
Amazing.
I'm literally waiting on a contract with the studio. That's fantastic. I've gotten suggestions to get a lawyer to look over this contract. Seems like sound advice.
Yeah.
How do you handle signing contracts? Are there resources I can use to find someone to get a consultation from? What are the ways I can protect myself as a writer?
Well, I would say that if you are close to closing on something, it might be a good time to actually approach an agent.
Oh, very good.
Because there's a time lock on it as well. So you're not going to them saying, you know, please, sir, can I have some more? It's not a Dickensian thing. You are saying, I'm a professional. I am this far along the path, but I need someone to, and they're lovely, but they are the weirdest people. They love contracts. Like,
no, they
so
do.
excited.
They do. I remember working as an assistant script ed, and I would have to send, oh my God, they would query everything.
Yeah.
Like, but they loved us. Yeah, they got stuck in. All right. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's the Guild is probably another.
Yeah, I was thinking that the Irish Writers Guild would be a great place to contact. Yeah, they would absolutely be able to give you advice.
But I would say if you can, to whoever that the question came from, if you can use that to start conversations with an agent, particularly if you're going to be the show creator, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
very good.
Protected.
And then Catherine says, unknown variables would be held to me too, and you gave some great tips there. Thanks for the hope, Carol. I've had it up to my eyeballs with showcase opportunity, and thank you for opening the floodgates, Carol, on dropping the S-bomb. Carol and I have been talking earlier about our love of cursing. And this is me talking now. This isn't the question. Remember, we were talking before about how we wouldn't curse. And then you said shit at one point in your speech. Yeah, it was fine.
No.
Anyway, but Catherine says, I've had it up to my eyeballs with showcase opportunity bullshit in the arts over the years. Any advice on payments rate, please, or where to look? I don't want to waste energy on anyone who might try to take advantage. Apart from that, it seems like an optimistic area with lots of work. Happy days.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting, that's a very question. When I started, I took some jobs that were very, very badly paid, actually. And I was just doing it in terms of, this is a start. This is kind of, I'm taking this job because I know it'll help me get to the next job. And I didn't have representation at the time. Yeah, that is very, very tricky. I would say talk to your other writer friends, if you have them, and say, this is the fee. Does that seem fair to you? And in the early days, I think that's kind of the only way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, just compare.
Exactly. And it's so weird because money is such a kind of a dirty topic, and
I know, and it shouldn't be.
No, it absolutely shouldn't be, because I think when we don't talk to each other about it, we allow there to be circumstances where creatives can be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
it's okay to turn. I have in the past said no to jobs where just it financially wasn't a fair rate.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. I know that it's also a privilege to be able to do that.
No, but I think it is. Yeah, no, I think it's good. Carol, we're going to have to wrap it up, I'm afraid, just for time. That was super. Anybody who put in a question that we haven't got to answer yet, don't worry. We'll be able to work through the answers with other people, other speakers coming up. Carol, thank you so much. That was
sorry for rambling and sorry for the S-bomb.
No. You were great. Thanks a million. Best of luck. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, so next up, we're going to have Caoimhe Cassidy, and Caoimhe is going to outline the next steps from finished script onwards as it enters what we call the production pipeline, which is the process of turning a script into an animation. We're so lucky to have Caoimhe with us here this evening. Hi, Caoimhe, thanks a million for joining us. Caoimhe is a line producer at Cartoon Saloon, currently working on the preschool series Silly Sundays. Caoimhe has over 20 years experience in the media industry, ranging from news and current affairs, documentary and entertainment programming. And since moving into animation nearly 10 years ago, she's worked across series for Nickelodeon, Amazon, BBC, PBS/WGBH, RTE and Warner Media. Hi, Caoimhe. Are you set?
I think so. Thank you everyone for having me. So thank you, Dee, for the introduction.
I'll stay here and I'll mute myself and then.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. Lovely to speak. As Dee said, I'm going to take things from script onwards. So Carol went through the processes there to get to your finished script. And then I'm going to explain the production, what we do with it, break it down. Now, this is really, really broad. And I thought maybe the best way to do this was, as Dee mentioned, I'm working currently on a series called Silly Sundays. It's preschool, which ties quite nicely into Carol talking about her Spuds in Space preschool pitch. So this is Silly Sundays, and I've taken a page from one of Dee's scripts from a lovely episode she did called Paper Sheep. And I have a few slides to show as we go through, so I'll explain and I'll go back and forth to show the pipeline too. So if you can bear with me, I am going to share my screen. Is that working okay, Dee? Because I could, oh, great. Okay. So apologies, it's a little difficult to decipher because of the white background and the black text, but this is a page from Dee's script. And I'm just going to show you broadly how, just this one page, how much work would go into it to bring the visuals of your script to life on screen. So the numbers either side of that, this is a very standard template that would be used for animation, and you can see the numbers on either side reference the line, the script line, and it opens with our location. You can also see what characters are going to be in the script. So that's our page, and then I now want to show you the pipeline. Now this is a very broad pipeline and it shows 15 stages, and I really need to emphasize this is very broad, and it's just to really again emphasize how many stages there are. Script is just the first, but then it feeds into all these other departments. So in production, we would break down that script and then feed all those other departments with the information they need. So design is kind of the first port of call. And I should say, and we'll come back to this at the end, that I'm basing this off the fact that this is a new page of a script. There's no reuse in it or anything like that, that we're just going at this completely new. Because for instance, Silly Sundays is 78 episodes, and budget and schedule are going to dictate sometimes to you as a writer what you can and can't do as far as location and props. But again, for this example, we'll just come at it new. So our first protocol would be design. And as you can see from Dee's script, from a design perspective, we know that there's 4 main characters there. We know the location is going to be the exterior corner patio during the day. There's also some origami paper figures. So there's a lot in that one page already. So for instance, for the main characters, you can see that there's going to be 4 of the 6 main characters will appear. So this is our design team's main character, the final lineup of our main characters. So we have Sonia, Hugo, Mel, Mom. So that's 4 characters. Dad and Granny don't appear in this particular page, but again, the design team would have worked on all of this during scripting, and this is what it would come to. Just to explain the letters and colours on the side here, the first 2 letters refer to the character, and that's their colour palette. So again, all those details are ironed out, and there's a lot of back and forth to get colours right, colour codes, everything like that. From design, once we have that, you're going to move to storyboard. Storyboard is the outline of what's in that page. So it will be the storyboard artist works very closely with the director on this to really visualize what that page would look like on screen. And I can, while we're doing storyboard, the voices used tend to be scratch voices, they're called. So that could be anyone in the studio, to be honest with you. It could be the editor, it could be whoever's willing to put their voice to it. And it's just to get timing right while we get the main actors to voice it themselves in the voiceover stage. Once we have that, it will be tweaked slightly because everyone reads things differently. Everyone emphasizes and acts words differently when it comes to the final thing, but it's just to get an idea of timing. And then you'll have your animatic, which essentially is bringing all those individual storyboard panels together so you can see how the episode would look like in outline. So again, I can show you a panel of, oh, I'm going ahead of myself. So this is a storyboard panel. It's actually taken from the animatic. So that's brought together in the edit. And this is what it would look like. It's the outline. You can see where the characters each sit. You can see the location. You can see the props. And that's just one panel, again, from the page we've discussed. From there, we would go on to what we have is post-board design. And again, I'm just maybe going to flick back to, it's a lot to take in, but we've gone through voiceover. We're now at animatic stage. We're in post-board design, which would be, again, the director would tell the design team what the intention is of maybe the individual little props in that scene. So Dee's page talks about origami frogs, elephants, and at this stage, the director will kind of guide the team on what angles might be needed if they are maybe flat props that don't need to be rigged. And I should explain that build and rig is kind of making structures or skeletons of those props. So they would need to have joints that might need to move and everything. So they're a team that it's very important that the various angles are discussed and the intention of what that prop needs to do in that page. So I can give you an example as well of that to kind of emphasize the visuals. So here's all of these origami animals and the various angles they might come to you at. So you soaked in tea, halfway done, 3/4 turns, halfway done. This is all the little intricacies that need to be taken into account when the build and rig team put together that skeleton to know where the joint needs to move. So it's quite intricate from that point of view. And then from build and rig, we have, and I'll go again back to my pipeline as reference, we have layout and backgrounds. So again, we would have a background, which we know is the exterior patio, and I will just show you the visual of this. Here it is here. So this would be the wide shot of your background, but Dee's shot has them all sitting quite nicely around the garden patio table. So the director would see this and then maybe say, do you know what, we need to go in a little bit tighter. Then in layout, they would discuss the camera perspective of how that would look. So all these things with the environment need to be taken into account. Again, just from that one page of Dee's description and how the visuals of it all come together. So after layout and backgrounds, we have posing. So posing would be, and scene prep is when we place the characters in the shot. So you've seen that beautiful background, but then you need to put the characters at the table and they, you know, see in what order they sit or how they interact and the distance between them and the table, them and the chairs, them and each other. This is all decided at that stage and it needs to be set before it's given to our animation team. And our animation team would do an initial pass of what would be kind of rough animation. And again, it's just to get the movement right, to show to the animation director what they envision the scene to look like, the timing of hand movements, things like that. And the rough pass would also not always have all what we call the lip sync. So it might have a little bit of lip sync, which is the character's mouths moving according to the script and the words that Dee has written. So I can give you an example of that actually, and I hope the audio works for me. Sorry, 1 second. So this is our rough animation. You can see the background is grayed out, so you can concentrate on the characters. And I just want to make sure that hopefully this works.
Wow, you made a flower, Mel.
I love the colourful petals, Mel.
And if you can see there, Mom's mouth didn't move, but you can see that Hugo's did. So it's just to get a timing sense of bringing this all
Froggy
together.
likes it too. Mom, what are you making?
I'm making an elephant.
And again, we saw how Dee's origami elephant, which again was just described as that, took all that work to get there.
Wow. I'm making a sheep now.
Oh, I like sheep. They're so friendly.
I made a pineapple.
Delicious.
And wow.
Sorry. So from there, sorry, apologies.
Oh, you made a
I need to get back out of it. Sorry, everyone.
Joe, I always get stuck at these things too.
There we go. Sorry. So that's the rough animation stage, and then it would be tidied up and the sync would be just right. And can you see the pipeline there, Dee? Is that okay?
Yeah.
That's the background. So after that, after animation, there is effects and compositing. So in this particular shot, there isn't a lot of effects. Again, things to keep in mind, the effects artist, when I show you now the final piece, the effects artist has done a lovely little water effects in the background, very subtly done. And then compositing is bringing it all together and bringing that final shot so you can see exactly how all those assets that have been built and created based on that one page come together. And before I show that, just to explain then, the final two stages are score and post. So score is when we would send it to a composer and they would do the score to the entire episode. There may be music. And then there's post, which is the sound effects and all those small little sounds that you may not even notice until the end that come together to bring it, to make it feel real, like you're at the beach or you're wherever your location is. And that's the final sign off. So when you're in post, that's kind of like when it gets packaged up and delivered to your broadcaster. So I'll show you the final scene as is.
Wow, you made a flower, Mel.
I love the colourful petals, Mel.
Froggy likes it too. Mom, what are you making?
I'm making an elephant.
Wow. I'm making a sheep now.
Oh, I like sheep. They're so friendly.
I made a pineapple.
Delicious.
So that is a very broad kind of start to finish of Dee's page of a script. But just to kind of circle back to a couple of things that Carol said, the importance of your script editor. So again, we came to that like it was fresh and it was new, but for instance, Silly Sundays is 78 episodes, and like a lot of long form series, you can't do every episode fresh and new. So there is an element of what we call as reuse. Carol will be familiar with this. Your script editor is going to kind of, I don't want to say limit, but there will be a scope to what you are able to write about. And that comes from, you can't have 20 characters in a scene, and that can even just be from a software perspective. That file would be too big to even open for an animator. So there is limitations on what you will be able to do. But the great thing is that you usually will have locked scripts you can read, and you'll have a script editor who knows the magical world they're talking about so well and can guide you on that. But it's just to prepare yourself that while, for instance, and again to something Carol said, we don't have any, we couldn't have Silly Sundays in space for an entire episode. There's limitations on locations and that's just the nature of it. But that can be nice, that can be reassuring, that can give you a regular and stylistic landscape to already delve into. And that's why it's so important. The script editor, I would agree, and the script editor is also a great bridge between you as a writer and production. So it's a wonderful relationship to definitely, develop, and she's so on point with that. So yes, that is kind of my perspective from script to screen.
That's brilliant. That's fascinating. It's so fascinating to see it laid out like that, and all the different steps, and also how much is, like, when I think about how much work there is in getting it to the final script, to the locked script, and then that's what it has to go through. And you're so right, because Liam was the script editor on Sundays, and there's so much work that happens in where there's so, like, on that episode there was so much back and forth in terms of, I think with every single iteration, every draft, there were changes of what animals were going to be in the origami, because you're trying to match it to characteristics of each character, but then also what's actually possible. And one thing was that I was, when I started working in animation, I hadn't realized how similar it is to live action in that sense, in that you have locations, and these are your fixed locations, and this is what you use, and it's literally, you have camera shots, and this is what you're going to see, is this corner of this room, and you can't just decide to see. And I think in my head I had thought, because things were drawn, that you just draw, just somebody would just draw it, like, be grand, without thinking, no, that's a person that has to be hired with their time and their expertise, and it's multiple drawings, and you have to tell them what to draw. And then and can you tell us about your role, Caoimhe? Like, what is your specific role? What does a line producer do?
So I suppose a little bit of, I'm across the entire line of the production, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. So you would be involved very much from pre-production and scripting all the way through. You'd be one of the first on the production and one of the last. So you see each stage through. So, and that's great, because you get to be involved in everything from the recruitment and meeting all these great artists, and then, working out the pipeline, because the pipeline does change. I simplified it. And if anyone from animation is looking at this, they're like, oh my God, she oversimplified it. I did. It's, it changes depending on production. It really does. So you're involved in those little things, and style can change the pipeline. So it's getting that right. And then working very closely with all the creative team all the way through. So yeah, it's great, because I do get to see it come full circle, which is lovely.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really rare. Thanks so much for demonstrating that, and for using a page of my script as an example, because it's really rare to see that process for a writer. We never get really to see that. Somebody has put in the Q&A, thank you, that was brilliant. I'm about to revise 2 YA fantasy live action screenplays for animation. Go you. What would you say are the essential differences in scripts? So I guess that would be what might they look out for? What would be the things that they'd need to consider?
In between scripts, as in?
Live action and animation.
Oh, God, it's difficult, because when I was in live action, I was in factual. So it wasn't scripted. So it's so different. So I went from completely unscripted documentaries where we did obviously script our voiceovers. So that was different, to fiction is so another beast of a thing. And again, it's things like keeping in mind, setting yourself a little bit of limitation, as in, obviously let your imagination go wild, but do be aware that, like, multiple locations and multiple characters increase your budget, and your budget is what dictates your schedule, and they're all linked. So it's not to, and I probably should have thought of a better word than limit, because that saying's wrong, but there has to be boundaries on what you do. And my role, even as a line producer, is sometimes not popular when you're having to tell creative people, we don't have that. But like, if you have that one episode, I'd say, well, the next one we'll have to turn the lights out. I was like, that's it. Like, we'll have to just have eyes on screen. I was like, you don't have. So there's a trade-off. So it's just to be careful that.
It's interesting, because that is when you get down to, if you are one of the people writing one of the last episodes, And it's true, I know from working on soap opera and also then on animation, you are told, okay, you've got these 3 characters, that's it. This is your one location, that's it. They're allowed 4 props. This is what they are. Go. You know.
Again, that can be great in some ways, like as in towards the end, being a writer towards the end, you then have a library, and that can be an amazing thing to look at because it could be just a wealth of things that could spark an idea for you. So there is, pros and cons to being at the start, the middle, and the end of it.
Totally. Quiva, we better move on. Thank you so much. That was such a great.
Thank you.
It was really, really useful. Thanks a million. That's great. Okay. And now, next up is our panel. We have a fantastic group of people gathered for you this evening. So I'm going to introduce them. And then I'm going to ask them some questions, and then we're going to start attacking the questions that are coming into the Q&A. So keep them coming. So first off, I would like to introduce Dina Diamond. Dina is an Emmy-nominated writer working on such shows as Princess Power, Vida the Vet, Leader of the Pack, The Chica Show, and a few others she can't talk about yet, but will be out soon. Dina's also a songwriter and has published over 550 songs featured in shows like Minnie's Bow Tunes, Cocomelon Lane, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, Baby Shark's Really Big Show, Word Party, and Chuggington, to name a few. And this, I love this. Her songs can also be heard in the live action shows at Disney theme parks around the world. Hello, Dina. Great to see you.
Hello.
And Bobby, you're next. Bobby Ahern is a writer, musician, and producer. He co-created the musical comedy Trial of the Centuries at Project Arts Centre, wrote the non-fiction book Do You Remember Your Man?, published by New Island Books, and is the writer-producer of the award-winning children's radio fantasy Nero's Class, that's on RTE. And as a recording artist, he releases music as both Sir Bobby Jukebox and No Monster Club. Hello, Bobby. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me along.
Lena, the amazing Lena Byrne, who has already been spoken about this evening. Lena has been editing with writers for over 23 years, and she put an exclamation mark there. She started as an assistant script editor on Fair City, like me. And when she realized she could do her job in cartoons, she made the move into animation, working on the CBBC series Roy. She was a script producer for Becca's Bunch for Nickelodeon and Jessie and Nessie for Amazon Studios. And in 2020, she co-founded So You Entertainment, where she wore many hats, including the role of head of development. Hello, Lena Byrne.
Hi.
And finally, it's my great pleasure to introduce Sarah Daddy. Sarah is an experienced writer and head writer for children's animation. She has worked on productions for many companies, including Disney, BBC, Netflix, Nickelodeon, Warner Brothers, and Sky. Recently, she has been concentrating on the big screen, writing the script for the Puff and Rock movie, and currently working on a feature film to be released in 2024. I love all this, well, I can't just talk about it. And actually, it's interesting because one of the things when I'm doing, when I'm running courses, and Bobby, you'll remember this, is we do NDAs, because it was in animation was where I got just companies are mad for NDAs all the time, getting you to sign non-disclosure agreements. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so I'm going to ask each of you a question just to kind of get things going. And Dina, I said this to you already. And it was actually, I think it was something Carol said about that it's good to kind of spread your wings and write into different areas, and that it's not just about writing for animation, it kind of springboards into other areas too. The Disney live action songs are the songs for the theme parks. That's amazing. How did that happen?
Well, like Carol said, diversify. And when I was working in live action when I became sick and lost my sight.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I was going to do. Because I wanted to be a director, and there's no such thing as a blind director yet. So I loved music, and I knew a lot of great musicians and songwriters. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to represent you guys. But again, going back to the whole blind thing, it's really hard to work a room when you can't see where everybody is and who they are. So I thought, well, I can't help these guys right now, but I started doing my own writing greeting cards and then short stories for women's magazines. And one of the songwriters I was representing, in air quotes, he would always ask me what I'm doing, and I'd ask what he's doing, and I used to throw him titles. Here's a title for a song, here's a title. And eventually he said, I love that title, let's write it together. And I said, as he always reminds me, oh, I'm not a songwriter, which was true. But I said, okay, let's write it together. And we did. And we started collaborating, and he was already established with Disney. And so I came in as a ghostwriter where I wouldn't get credit, but I would help write the songs. And he would obviously pay me at that point. And eventually it got to the point where, as he likes to say, you're indispensable in my career. I need you, and you earned your place as my co-writer. And so that's how we started writing for all the Disney parks and Disney shows.
That's fantastic. That's great. That really is. It's some achievement. And it really, again, like what I was saying to Carol, it really shows the resilience behind it, though, that you just have to keep going.
Yes.
And keep
Yes,
kind of
you
believing.
can't always get paid, but sometimes a credit on a resume is just as valuable, especially when you're just getting started.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as well, it's about your instinct, isn't it? Knowing which is, and do you think
Yes.
too, it was that you had, it was somebody you trusted, you had a good working relationship with him? With that?
Yes, I think that's a lot of it. And one thing I've always said, when you are starting anything, you need two people to believe in you. Number one has to be yourself. You have to know that you can do it. You might second guess yourself, but you have to know you've accomplished a lot of things in your life, whether you think they're important or not. So if you believe in yourself, and then you find that one other person who believes in you, and that was the songwriter. He believed I could do it when I didn't. And he helped me prove to myself I could. And that has continued on in my script writing journey also. It's just that one showrunner, that one executive producer who thinks you can do it. And when they get their next show, they bring you along. And then their next show, they bring you along. And you just accumulate that as you go. It's all about the relationships.
I agree 100%. That's great. That's really gold. Thanks, Tina. We'll come back to you again in a little bit. Bobby, hello. It's great to see you.
Hello.
So you are, I suppose you would be regarded as an emerging writer in a sense, in that you are, I mean, you're not at the beginning of your career, but you're in the first stages. Would you say?
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
correct. You can absolutely correct
No,
me.
I fully agree with you. Yes.
But that's why I think your perspective is really important here this evening, and that's why I think that it's really great that you've joined us, and thank you. So I'm interested because Dina, there's a connection between yourself and Dina because you are a musician and you're a lyricist as well. And you at the moment, so you are writing, again, talking about diversifying, you're writing for radio.
Yes, well, it's important, I guess, to stress that I haven't actually broken into the world of writing for animation yet, at least. So at the moment, yeah, I'm doing a radio drama,
which is brilliant. And you, again, something that Carol referenced, you set about getting the funding for that yourself. So you did all the applying and everything yourself.
Yes, exactly. So it was kind of, I had different ideas for shows and things like that over the years, and it's like a dream to have like someday have like an animated series or something like that. But at some point I realized that I don't actually have any connections in the animation industry or in production companies, and I'd have a better chance of like winning the lottery than barging into brown bag films and being like, get me the manager. So at some point, I think during COVID, I guess I realized it was time to like go down the DIY route, and because I can't draw, and radio drama made sense because I have a background in audio production and music and songwriting and stuff like that. So I thought that it was my best bet to kind of make a sort of radio cartoon and take things from there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And just one final question. So when you applied for the BAI funding, because it was BAI you applied for and got, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, they're now known as Coimisiún na Meán, but yeah, I think if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yes,
Haven't said it out loud yet, so I'm a
I
bit
know. I had to look up the pronunciation.
And was that something that you decided to do on your own? Were you advised to do that by somebody, or did you just do a bit of research and go, okay, I'm going to go for this?
Yeah, so how it works, I guess, if you want to do like a radio series like that, is that first of all you have to find a radio station who will pledge to fund, it's usually 1/5 of the budget, but also pledge that they will air your program if it gets made. So that could be any radio station. It could be like Phoenix FM in Blanchardstown, do it, and Ocean FM down the west. But so I went with RTE Junior, the radio station, which is in the process of being dismantled by all the stuff at RTE, but they'll still be going forward with like podcasts and things like that. So basically you get a letter from them, you get them to pledge that they like the show idea and stuff, and that if it is funded, they will air it. So that's the first kind of hurdle that you come to. And then if they approve it, then you can apply to Coimisiún na Meán for the kind of 80% for the main amount of the funding. So yeah, there's a few applications involved, and there's a few people that you have to gatekeepers that you have to get past, but that was the way that made most sense, I guess, for me. But yeah, I did a lot of research online, and there's some people who have shared their successful BAI applications from the past, and I was able to kind of look at them and kind of learn from different people's experiences in the past as well.
That's great. Well, fair play to you, and we'll come back to you shortly. Sarah, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Now you are the other end. You're where Bobby's going to be in around, well, less than 10 years. So
probably a year, Bobby. You'll be.
Yeah. So you're very experienced. And can I ask you, at this point in your career, do you feel like you're in control? Like, do you self-direct? Do you decide what you want 2025 or 2026 to look like? Or do you still go with the flow a little bit?
I absolutely go with the flow. I don't think I am in no control of my career whatsoever. The only way I can choose the things I turn down. Now I'm lucky to be able to do that. However, I cannot control the things I really want and don't get. So, there's many rejections of the stuff I really want. So I am in control.
Everybody's nodding there when you say that.
You're at the mercy of broadcasters. Oh, are you the name they want? Or there's a whole. And one thing I want to say is a lot of people think every children's writer can write for every show. I absolutely disagree. I think some people are good at some stuff, and it's not just a rote thing, you know. So absolutely, I love to go with the flow. And I will say I am only experienced in one area. So, preschool, that's fine. But I'm still even learning about that. And if I wanted to go into another area like drama or much older, I'm still an absolute novice.
Yeah.
So I think you're always learning as a writer.
Yeah. Oh, that's part of the joy as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant. And you're terrified. Like when I first
You'd be terrified all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
But you just have to jump in and do it, because what can you lose apart from your reputation? Of course, that doesn't matter.
But it's I do find that fascinating that it isn't, I suppose in other careers, you kind of, as you get more and more experience, you become a little more hardened. And I feel sometimes with writing in this industry, that isn't always the case. It does feel like you do feel quite fragile each time. It's like a whole brand new,
especially when it's new territory, which you really should do and want to do, but you're absolutely terrified it'll all go wrong.
Yeah. Freshly hatched, as my stepdad.
Yes, so you're never ever fully experienced. That's my experience. You always have more to learn.
That's a great safety net, actually. I love that. Thank you, Sarah. And Lena.
Hey.
Hello, Lena. Thanks so much for joining us here this evening. So we were talking earlier when Caoimhe was talking about the pipeline, and she was talking about the importance of the script editor as being the person who takes the writer to the point where the script is ready to enter the pipeline. And you are, we were talking about this the other day, and I was joking that you're a script midwife because
one more draft.
Because one more draft. Lena, you are queen of one more draft, I have to say. But we were talking too about how important teamwork is in animation. And I think in other areas that writers work in, you know, if you're a novelist, like, yes, you'll have an editor or whatever, but for months you will be on your own with your kind of your manuscript. Whereas with animation, from the beginning, like from the second somebody goes, sure, that's a good idea, let's hear more of it, then you have somebody feeding back. Like, no, it can't be crisps, it has to be spuds. Actually, let's chuck the spuds, it's veg, whatever. How important do you feel teamwork is?
I think how wonderful to be in a business where you're not on your own. You get to write, but you get to collaborate with so many people. And I actually think what Caoimhe put together made me realize, oh my goodness, how many people are actually involved.
Yeah, right.
And then to bring it back to why we're here and all the writers listening in, is all that comes from the script. You're literally presenting a character that never existed before. Like your elephant character. Like, I was thinking, how did you come up with that? Where did that idea come from? Did you have to change it? And then you go, someone has to go, what does that look like? So something that never existed before, you put on a page, and then a whole team of people get to work on that. Like, how amazing is that?
Yeah.
This is our job? Are you kidding?
Another thing that I wanted to talk about is, which Carol talked about, and that is, and it's also part of the script midwife bit, is the notes and giving notes, getting notes, how to deal with notes. Because notes can often feel like that rejection that we've mentioned, but actually you have to be able to frame them in a way that is acceptable to you, that overrides your natural defense mechanisms, and that makes you kind of give up your ideas as something that's shared by the team. What do you think? What makes it, I suppose, when you're working with a writer, what are any tactics or techniques that you use in terms of giving notes, or ways that they use?
I suppose I'm a cheerleader for the writer. So I'm there to say, we want this script and your ideas and your vision to make it on screen. So this is the best way to do it. And I will be the first to throw a tantrum if I get a note that's like ridiculous. And then I'll have to give it to the writer and sell it. So I know what it's like when you go, no, this is an amazing idea. Please don't get rid of the origami elephant. Please don't. So I know when you get a note. But I also know the reason why you're getting this note is because one of Caoimhe's team is saying, we can't do this. This will be too much money. You've got to consider sometimes you're part of like 52 episodes or 104 episodes even. So, you know, when you say the notes aren't personal, they're generally not. And I think the ability for a writer to, and everyone here on this call will be able to share this experience, the ability of the writer to go, if I take this note, this will really, really help me get to the next draft and get paid and get it on screen and get another episode. Because one of the really nice things, and I was very lucky. Carol totally undersold herself. Carol was so impressive when I first met her in Fair City. But the one thing you're doing is you're not just selling your idea and your script, you're selling yourself. You are selling, I can work with you and I can take notes. But what you can also say is, and sometimes writers don't do this, is they go, I don't understand that note. I don't understand what you need me to do there. So ask about a note. Don't think you just have to get them and implement them, because sometimes, we'll be doing like loads of other things that day. Will be one of 4 scripts we'll be giving notes on. Ask, have a chat. They're
so
not gospel.
it's like a conversation you're having with the script ed, as opposed to, Yeah. Just seeing the script editor as like your boss going.
They're not, they're your collaborator, they're your team, they're your cheerleader, they're your midwife.
I mean, it's probably a terrible analogy. Sorry.
I like it.
I was rushed.
I've given birth to thousands of scripts.
Delivering a script.
Yeah, proud of every single one of them.
That's really good. And what was it? There was another thing. Oh yeah, I was going to ask, and it's kind of on note. So sometimes I would find, if I get a note and I can get really stuck, the way sometimes your brain just goes into, you'll get a note and it throws you off the track. Like when Carol was saying earlier, have more fun with it. And, and I can get bogged down. And what do you do when you're stuck? And this is a general question.
So I have given that note. I'm so sorry, right? Because sometimes you don't know what's missing about it. And it's an awful note to give and it's a worse note to receive. So it's very frustrating. And I think you do get stuck. And sometimes, and Dee, you taught me this, sometimes you just need thinking time. Someone might give a note and say it needs more fun because they don't know what's wrong with it. It looks great, but they actually don't know what maybe is missing. So it is nice to go, do you want it shorter? Do you want it funnier? Are the characters not singing enough? But I suppose one of the things you can do to help yourself, I have some free things you can do. Okay. Yeah. So these are things that you can do, which I think will really help you, so that if you have a problem with a script, you get to spend more time talking about that extra bit of gold, that pixie dust you want. So if you're not good at, spelling or typos and all that stuff, get someone who is. So before I send this in, will you check this for me? So the script editor's like, oh, this writer is brilliant. Look at how clean their script is. If you're told it needs to be 7 pages long, please don't send in 11 pages, because then you're going, how do I cut this? And so, again, this is for free. Read your script out loud before you send it in, because sometimes it might look good on the page, but it mightn't sound like dialogue, so just all those little things, I call them for free. And just hit the deadline. Or if you're not going to hit the deadline, tell your script editor way in advance so they can let the team know. So if you imagine all of these things, I call them for free. So if you just go, no matter what, I'm going to do this, then you get to spend the time with the script editor. If the end of the episode isn't working, you've got more time with them.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. There's a writer I know, and maybe you know who I'm talking about, Lena. I think we both know her, who's a great writer. And when she is stuck, I've worked with her in the past, and I'll give her notes and I'll be like, or even just like, we need an extra page, or we need an extra beat here or whatever. And I don't have any ideas. And she goes and she meditates.
Whoa.
We meditate.
I actually take a shower.
Do you?
Yes. There's something about water.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just thinking time instead of singing time.
Yeah.
In the shower. That's what I
find
think.
driving is really good as well.
Yes.
I get, for some reason, I think it's the act of moving forward or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if no one else fails what I normally do, it really helps, because sometimes you just get so much in your own head that I sometimes leave it, depending on the deadline, of course, Lena, because I always make those, but I leave it for a day.
Oh.
Sometimes I will leave it and let it sit there and come back and read it, and it somehow in the morning clicks into place sometimes.
Yeah, Dina's nodding there. Dina,
when I get locked up, I say the problem right before I go to sleep. When I'm thinking, how in the hell am I going to get that duck out of the tree if I can't use a balloon? There are not enough assets. How am I going to do this? And I'm frustrated, but then I go to sleep and I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning like, stupid. Of course that's what we're going to do.
That's so true.
I love that, the duck in the tree.
And Dee, can I just say, one of the nice things is you never have a cartoon that stops for 10 seconds because they didn't find a solution. You will find it. Trust that you will find it, and trust that there's a whole team of people there who want to help you. So there is a solution.
Yeah, I agree. Bobby, what do you do when you're stuck?
So I keep kind of like, well, I'm sure everyone here does, but good advice for anyone who's like watching and you know, budding new writers and everything like that. And just keep a notebook and put down like every single little idea that pops into your head, because you might think of something and think, oh well, I'll remember that when I need it, but you won't remember it. It'll disappear. So like put everything in the notebook, and I have this, it's now like a Word document that has like hundreds of tiny ideas, ranging from things that could be like full episodes to like just little tidbits and little jokes and things like that. But when I get stuck with like figuring out how to get the duck out of the tree or whatever, I generally just like scroll and scroll and scroll through this document, and eventually I see something that I can like pluck out, and just like they're all like jigsaw pieces, and I can slot one in and it'll somehow work in the narrative, or I can make it work. It can be kind of molded into something that works for that specific scenario. So that's generally what I do. But then also all the other, that's probably after all the other things, going for a walk and having a shower and everything else. I can't drive, but I do wash.
You do wash. That's very good. Yeah, it's interesting. We're talking, you're making me think about time. And that was something that we talked when we had like a preliminary chat the other day. And Dina, you said something that really, really stuck with me about how when you're writing an episode, you're writing a joke for an audience that won't see it for like 2 years, potentially, because it can take that long with the production pipeline. And I just wondered, I hadn't considered it in that way before. And how do you do that?
It's difficult, but if you are a freelancer and you're coming onto somebody else's show, the best thing you can do is obviously know these characters inside and out, whether they have a backstory or not. You have to know them so that you can reach deep down and know how, in my case, how far you can push the line. What's the limit? Because I'm going to push it as far as I can for that joke. Because even if a joke doesn't work on the page, it can work in your writer's room, which will just stimulate everybody else because everyone's laughing like, oh, well, no, we can't do that. How about this? Or same with your story editor. So the best thing to do is also, you were hired to do this because they believe in you. You understand this show and it's your sense of humor or your empathy, whatever it is. And so you have to just go with your gut.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned writers' rooms. Do you like them? Are they kind of a happy place?
I love them and miss them desperately because everything now is being done on Zoom. So everything's done in a summit. So we don't get to punch anymore, which was always my favorite thing to do.
What's punch?
Oh, punch when you have a finished script. Everybody reads the script, you get together in the room and then point out which areas need funnier jokes. And so you have actors read it, or everyone, just the story editor reads the script aloud, and then you're like, okay, this joke doesn't work. Oh, well, instead of that, when the duck falls in the mud, it should be, oh, there we go, mud in your eye, whatever it is.
Yeah,
but you just want to, and everyone does that and just rolls off of each other. And then you end up with 3 great jokes, and whichever one's going to fit best.
Yeah, that was something when I started that I couldn't get over in like one of my first writers' rooms. I had pitched an episode, and whoever was running the writers' room was like, okay, let's look at this. And they sort of wrote it up, and then everyone was like, okay, well, that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and that doesn't work. And then somebody had an idea, and then someone else had a brilliant idea, and then someone else had a brilliant idea, and they wrote them up on the board and then handed me back the episode and said, okay, now you can go write that. And it was like with brilliant ideas, so much better.
Yeah.
When I had been banging my head off the wall on my own. Yeah, and I loved that. I loved that about the writers' room, the energy of it, with everyone feeding in.
I think people have to be careful that the energy is really positive in a writer's room, though, because I know a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, are very intimidated by writers' rooms.
Yeah.
Because there's experienced pitchers who are pitching their idea, and these people are brilliant, but they don't even, I know some people would sit there and not say a word.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really impossible to foster when I'm running writers' rooms that everyone's opinion matter, you know what I mean? And you can just throw out whatever you want and there's no judgment.
Yeah, Dean is agreeing. And Lena, did you want to say something there?
I suppose, yeah, one of the things I would say about writers' rooms is if you are nervous, actually pitch earlier than later. Don't wait until later on. Everyone gets an opportunity. And usually you say, would anyone like to go first? Or you could say to the person leading the room, I'd actually like to go second. Could you come to me earlier? Because what will happen is that someone else might have a similar idea, but you get to pitch it first. And the other thing I'd say about a writer's room is don't be afraid to bring yourself into it. They're generally a really safe space. I was doing a writer's room with someone once, and it was about sisters. And I think it was on the second day that they mentioned they had 10 sisters. I was like, first of all, who has 10 sisters? And secondly, we are literally doing a show about sisters. You are a gold mine. So, you know, it's just that thing of nearly, I suppose I would say I welcome when someone goes, actually, this is my experience, because if it's no one else's experience. So if possible, and you feel comfortable, dial up yourself in a writer's room if you get the opportunity.
Yeah. And I love when they're very collaborative as well, and people can start with one little idea and then someone else pitches in, that type of thing, rather than putting all the focus on someone reading out their, you know, their pitch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a question in from one of the attendees, and it's an interesting question. They say, what about those of us who would actually prefer to start in a writer's room? Is it possible to start there rather than start writing alone? What do you think?
So I think it's about how you get the opportunity to get into the writer's room. And sometimes people go, it's not fair. I can't get into a writer's room because I don't have experience. But what you can do is that if you contact production companies or animation companies, and Carol gave an amazing list earlier on, and if you said, I would actually really like to shadow, is there a shadow scheme? I would love to be involved. Or can I be the person? I take brilliant notes. You should see my notes. They're amazing. I would say you should get paid. I'm an advocate of making sure everyone who's in that room, because you'll end up contributing. So it's about how you get into that room to get the opportunity. And it's also amazing to learn from people. You'll see how people, sometimes the quietest people will just then come out with like the solve for an episode. And you're like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I would say, yes, you absolutely can. It's just the step previous to that is you go, how do I do it? And I suppose doing a course like the one you're going to be doing in the future, Dee, is a great gateway in to say, actually, hello, Turnip Duck, I just did this course. If you're doing a writer's room, or hello, Cartoon Saloon, you know. So it's all about kind of, I know it's very hard to network, but you can do that by email.
Yeah, and you're right. You could even start taking notes. For example, when I started, I was went to the BBC every day for 6 months in Glasgow, where I just finished uni, and battered on their door. And I started as a production secretary and worked my way up through the BBC. And I learned so much as a production secretary. You know, I was doing the flights and the admin, but there we go. It's about ways in.
Well, because you're making yourself indispensable, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
And that's the one thing in the writer's room, is because the one thing you want is a record of what happened. There is nothing worse than getting home and going, oh, I'm missing that one thing that they said that was gold about my idea.
And the great thing about the BBC then was when you had a writer's room, everyone could pitch ideas, not just writers.
Yeah.
So everyone from the production manager to was sort of, if you have an idea, say it.
Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to, there's another question here. I'm going to start bringing in the questions from the attendees. And it's kind of on it. Somebody's asking, which is a really common question. So if they have a script, who would they contact in an animation studio to find out if they'd be interested? So who would they go to?
Dee, can I ask, do they mean a script they're looking to get their own idea made, or is it that they're looking to write on a show?
I'm assuming that it is that because they haven't said spec, so I'm assuming it's a script that they would like to get made.
So I guess Some studios just create their content, you know, in-house, and they're, you know, it is quite hard. RTA are amazing for giving people opportunities and connecting people. RTA are really good that if you approach them and say, I have this idea, that they'll go, oh, this is a company that could really bring that to life. Again, getting funding to really develop it. Maybe before you show it to someone, see if you could get funding to get a script editor to give it a pass and make sure, because if you get one shot to pitch this idea, Animation Dingle also has great opportunities to pitch. I would say going to talks like this and meeting people and saying, can I pitch an idea? Make sure you get an NDA, make sure you're protected. Expect it to be a long process. I think Carol explained it beautifully, just how long it is. That would be my experience in Ireland of that.
And can I ask, because there are other people asking again, so what kind of writing material should they have together? Should they have gathered together if they want to break into the industry? So should they have a few different spec scripts? Sarah's nodding. Yeah, you feel that's a good.
Yes, definitely. And you know, what I would say is try and go in personally or get your face known in, because there's a lot of emails like the development where they go, send us your script. And when I was working in development, I can tell you 95% of those, you have to figure out as well another way
to
get yourself noticed.
Yeah, well, it's like the 1980s. How did you get your CV noticed? Do you know?
Yes, but definitely spec scripts. Even if a production company is doing, or an animation is doing a show you really loved, or have done a show you really loved, sometimes it's nice to do a spec script based on that show. I've always been impressed when someone took the time to think of a story for the show we were producing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, yeah. And it's always easier as well, because if you're doing a spec script of an existing show, then at least you have all of that.
And you never know, we might go, oh, that's brilliant. It's getting made.
I think it also helps to have a script that is an original.
Yeah, definitely.
It's your voice. So then they understand, okay, this is the type of writer this person is. This is their humor. Like I write preschool. However, I have an adult live action that I send out, and I get meetings all the time because they read them like, this is you? Oh, we have to meet you. You are crazy.
No, you're right. It's nice, their voice, you know, a completely original script too.
Yeah. And somebody had a question earlier for Caoimhe, and they've asked, could I put it to you folks as well, about they are about to revise 2 young adult fantasy live action screenplays for animation. So what would the essential differences be? Any tips for them?
Well, I started out in live action, and the actual dialogue and stuff isn't that different for me, but what is very different is the amount of action I put in and the description.
Oh.
Yeah, because writers with the live action actors get very annoyed if you put in too much guidance for them about the way they should say it or what they should be doing. So if you see a live action, sometimes it's just lines of dialogue with hardly any stage direction. And I put a lot more stage direction in.
Interesting, because I know from working on I know from working in theatre a little bit, and then working on soap opera, and actually it was somebody who I worked with used to, and I thought they explained it really well to me, was the idea that if you take a script, which is similar to Caoimhe's brilliant presentation, and if the script is kind of a map for this team of people to use to make, you know, the episode of whatever, that you have to leave room for each person to do their job.
Yes.
So as the writer, you have to leave room for the director to direct and for the actor to voices.
That's right. But if you think of your animation script, it's going on to the director, yes, but also storyboarders who have
totally. It's a different, exactly.
They have to know exactly what you're talking about. So they add their own brilliant, probably much better than I could ever stage.
No, but it absolutely, it is interesting.
But it's like, and I know a lot. I worked in a production recently, which was was being animated in 3 different countries, so everything had to be really precise and exact, generic almost, so that everyone was reading off the same hymn sheet, you know. So that's what I would say. Imagine someone has to, when they're reading your script, realize visually what that's going to be.
Yeah. And actually somebody else has a question here, which is similar. How much descriptive does the script need to be? Do we need to write, then he turns the head, the camera zooms more on his head, then there's a gradual shake in the camera. So you don't need to direct the camera.
I think, I don't know about Dana and later, but it depends on your director as well, to be honest. But the director does a lot of, I never really do personally, a lot of zooms or close-ups. For me, that's a director thing. It's much more just a description for me, but maybe Dina's different.
Dina, you're nodding there.
No, everyone is there. It is a collaborative thing, and you have to let somebody have the freedom, because just like you mentioned earlier, we aren't, as writers, we're not privy to what's happening in animation, and we only know that when we get the notes like, sorry, you can't, build a waterfall here. We only learn that. But if it would be great if all shows had a meeting between the writers and the animators the first day to let you know your parameters. So I think you let them do, because they can do things that you haven't thought about.
Yeah.
So let them go crazy, and then you guys can reel each other in or expand.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And actually somebody else has a question here, which kind of leads into it too. Do many people work remotely? Is it important for a writer to be in the room with everyone on the team regularly? And when I started working, I couldn't believe that the writer kind of never really met people. I mean, I've worked on shows where I've never had an in real life meeting with anybody.
You know what? I would say no, we don't, but we don't have to, and that's good for me, considering I shun most people. But I'm scared of people. I much prefer animals. But what we do have is constant, because you're building with your writers, as you say, a collaboration, a real relationship. So we're constantly on Zoom or talking. But one thing I will say, nothing beats meeting people in person. And that's what Dina said. She misses those writers' rooms, and because you can have the best laugh and just be inspired by that, But you don't have to. A lot more, especially since COVID, it's a lot more remote.
Yeah, it's a shame. I'm really struck as well, Dina, by what you were saying about the reading aloud of a script, because that's something I haven't encountered yet in an animation setting. And I think that's
so
really
important.
Yeah.
Yes. It's always important. I have the benefit because my computer talks.
Okay.
Too much, but my computer talks to me. So I have whatever I'm typing is read back to me immediately. So that helps me catch typos. And I know if you use Final Draft and you have a current version of that, I think you're able to turn it on, or you can get different voices from the characters reading to you. And I think that helps.
That's amazing. Can you?
Amazing.
I think so. I personally don't use it, but I think that is one of the things that it's able to do, and it will read back to you. And that helps you catch things that you won't necessarily, because you know what it says and you expect it to say that. But when you hear it back, you're like, oh, wait a second. I meant you're, not you are. So it just catches little things like that. But also, even when you're coming up with any idea, whether you want somebody's advice or not, just to stand in front of your dog or another human and to say something, you then hear it back. You're like, oh, that's what I'm missing. Thanks. Bye. Here's a bone. And then you go. Oh.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Because I think the script can read really well on a page. But remember, it is meant to be spoken. And as soon as you start speaking it, some things just don't work, or it feels not very conversational, So I think just reading, even you're right, to anyone is really important to see if the dialogue flows.
Yeah, and actually we have a great question here from Ailish, and apologies if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, Ailish. Thank you so much for all the information so far. At the moment, I'm working as a speech and language therapist and studying animation as well. I have always had an interest in developing a series geared towards children with additional needs and/or speech and language delay. Is there scope to develop a series like that, or would the target audience be considered too narrow? Thoughts?
I would say everyone is
Yeah.
the audience, that you're writing for every kid watching, which is wonderful. And once the character is strong, kids come back to the shows for character. So there's so many shows like Pablo that, you know, is about a kid with autism, and that it actually is just everyone comes back because they love Pablo, who just happens to be autistic. So I think there's absolute scope. I also think there's great opportunities for diversity on screen, and I hope that person applies for funding and gets it, and that we get to see that one day.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a brilliant idea. Also because well, not every child, but a lot of children learn to speak at varying stages in their lives, you know, and you can't assume it's all at the same rate. So yeah, I think that show sounds super. Yeah.
Sound is such a very important part of our show, whether it's music, whether it's dialogue, whether it's the underscore. It's a huge part because it lets you know what's happening in that. So to tackle something like this, and right now around the world, everyone is trying to be more open to other people's POV. And as a person with a disability, I've had the door slammed in my face. And like it was discussed, I think Carol mentioned it earlier, adult live action is a very harsh place to be, and it's more cutthroat. And when I got into animation, it was like a big warm hug and marshmallows and hot chocolate. It was just fabulous. I was embraced and I was allowed to bring my specific POV. And now when I'm on a show, they always turn to me right away and say, hey, you're going to write a blind episode, right? I'm like, of course I will. So don't shy away from whatever makes you and your specific voice, because what you're bringing is one character that has that, and everybody else is going to see themselves in the screen in your other characters in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's super. That's great. Thank you. Okay. Somebody is asking, and this is a very kind of Irish specific question. So Lena, perhaps you can take this. What are the chances of working in this industry if you live outside of Leinster?
Oh, very good chances. Sure, look where
good.
Cartoon Saloon is. There's really, really good chances. Did Quiva say, and you know this, I think you worked on it, was there 78 episodes of Silly Sundays? They need a lot of writers. Also, writers can't write 2 episodes at the same time. Well, they can, but like what they need is a team writing like 6 episodes, a block going the whole time. So I think there's absolutely huge opportunity, and especially as Dina was saying, so many writers' rooms are on Zoom now. So if anything, now is the time.
Yeah,
I
never
totally understand the question, though. I totally do understand. But I think what's important is to look up. Animation Ireland have an amazing website. You see the list of all the all the companies in Ireland where they're based. You know, you might find someone local. If you're reaching out to someone, I'd always say watch one of their cartoons before you say hello to them, and say why you liked it and why you'd like to work with them, because just that personal connection really, really helps. And also, the National Talent Academies they do stuff all over Ireland, all over the country. So when they come to town, go to the talks. Even it might be about film, but you might get to meet someone there who will give you an opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. Dina, a question has come in for you. Hi there, question for Dina. Do you format the scripts in Word, or is there a script writing software that's screen reader friendly? I am also blind. Thanks to
Okay. I will tell you, I use Final Draft. However, I use a version on a 20-year-old computer. And so it is not accessible with JAWS, which is the screen reading program that I currently use. It is not accessible, but I am working with JAWS and working with Final Draft to try and make it accessible. So in your case right now, I would write it out in Word and then have it pasted into a Final Draft, or there's also, I think, Screenwriter is another format. And I don't know if in Ireland, if there's a specific format that you all use that would work and be accessible.
Okay. Final Draft is kind of, I think, what most of us use.
Standard.
Actually, okay. A tip I keep every time we run courses, I contact Final Draft every single time and ask them if they can give us, because there are courses for diverse and disabled writers, and I say it's a particular cohort, could you please provide some licenses? And they never do. But what they do, no, they never do. But they do say that if you have bought software elsewhere, that they can give it to you, I think, for a better price, or there's something competitive you can show them. So I would say to you, if you are about to purchase one of the other competing softwares, it might be worth getting in touch with them and saying, hi, I'm about to buy this for €50. Can you do me a deal? And see what they say. That was what was suggested to me by one of their agents. Catherine says, on the topic of sound, can any creative contribute, or do you mostly hire Foley artists? I have a basic Zoom audio recorded and love to record sounds, create them organically. Oh, sorry, basic Zoom audio recorder. She corrected herself. So I think Catherine's asking, can anybody contribute sounds? Or is it, but I suppose when you're in a studio working with a particular production company, you have your sound creatives who are hired, as the writers are hired to write the scripts, the sound creators are hired to make the sounds, would be my thinking. Yeah.
I think they're already sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, unless, Bobby, if you had any thoughts, maybe if there's something that Catherine could use to channel her.
I'm not 100% certain what Catherine is asking, but like I would, radio dramas exist, and if you're somebody who enjoys like recording and building a world through sound rather than illustrations and things like that.
That's what she means. Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely an avenue worth looking down, and obviously the world of, it's not something that I would have thought about maybe 5 years ago, and the world of podcasts has obviously grown so much, but the world of like radio dramas, which they were one of the most popular forms of entertainment in the 30s and 40s, and then they were wiped out by TV. I don't think anybody saw that they would like come back again with such a resurgence. So now like with things like RTE Junior Kids and the stuff that they've made over the past like 5 or 6 years, Carl has been involved in several of them as well. There's a whole other world available there of radio dramas and using audio to tell stories. So maybe Catherine would be interested in like kind of looking down that avenue as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. Sarah has just said a tip. Fade In is a script writing software that is cheaper than Final Draft, and you can save it to FTX and also open FTX files. Very good.
Okay, that's fantastic.
And I would add to that, there's one called Highland, which was developed by John August, the screenwriter. He wrote loads of the kind of Tim Burton films and stuff like that. But he has a screenwriting software available that's free. I think you can buy a license for it, but if anybody wants to try out scriptwriting software and doesn't even have a few quid and wants to test it out, I'd recommend Highland as well.
Okay, super.
Yes, and I think that's available for Mac, for Apple products.
Oh yeah, and you can export in all the different formats as well, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. If I'm aware that we are at 7 and the panel were told that it would finish at 7. So if you need to hop off, that is fine. If you can stay another couple of minutes, that's great, but don't worry if you can't, that is absolutely okay. A question here from Ola. Question to the panel. A couple of friends and I are considering starting an organization called Black in Animation Ireland, to encourage more Black artists and even more people of colour to be involved in the Irish animation industry. Brilliant. And even the industry in general. Yes, as there seems to be a lack of diversity and representation in that area. 100%. Is there any other organisations that focus on Black and people of colour artists? Because as one myself, it can feel very isolating for sure. And any tips in regards to starting one? Lena, you would know more maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the difficult, first of all, I'm so excited to hear this, and can that person reach out to me afterwards, because if I can help in any way, I would love to help them. I think one of I think Ireland could be a hub for writers in animation. Dina, you can move over. But I just think we are in a wonderful position. There's amazing talent. I think we're great at taking notes. And I think one of the things that's really important is to have diversity in the room. I think because it represents our society, and I think it represents the audience watching at home. And I think we don't have that. And, you know, I think it's the sort of thing that there's amazing opportunities. You know, I've worked with Nickelodeon, and they don't want a room where there's loads of people that look exactly like me and my lived experience. So I think there is a need for this. I think there could be huge support for this, and I welcome it and say, yay, please do. I don't know anyone else doing this, but I think it's something that I think needs to start in schools. I went back to my old school, Ballymun Comprehensive, because I think one of the things people say is, you know, oh, like I want to be a footballer, but do you think if you don't make it to the first 11, there's no other jobs? We've seen from what everyone's speaking today, there's so many different jobs. You could be an editor, you could be a writer, you could work in the production. So yes, please, please, please contact me. I would love to help.
There you go. And actually, Lena, I have a question for you. And also this is for Sarah and Dina and Bobby as well. So it's a question for you all. Thank you again. All of this is so informative and inspiring. Where could we access animation scripts?
Google. Yes. So the BBC Writers' Room have really good sample episodes.
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember when I'm so embarrassed, but I'll share it. When I first went for the job as assistant script editor in Fair City, I saw the script. I was given the script and I had to give notes on it. And I was like, I give my notes, there's also weird triangles on all the pages. That was the format. And I didn't realize how I got the job. I don't know. But I think familiarizing yourself with what a script looks like, when you get the opportunity to write a script and you get given it back, it's amazing. If you know a writer, ask them for a sample episode, you'll be amazed. And also read scripts. The other thing I do is when I watch cartoons, I put on subtitles.
Yeah,
so
I do that.
I'm constantly reading. It's how I watch TV. So I constantly watch the subtitles to see how the script is. And I just think just familiarizing yourself. But the BBC Writers' Room have great examples. And I think if you Google, you know, animation samples, and also look at Bibles, it's not just about the script, it's where the script comes from. So if you're looking to do a sample episode and you can see what a Bible is, and for anyone who doesn't know what a Bible is, it's a document that usually gives what the series is about, some sample episodes. I know Carol brilliantly touched on it earlier, and also the character breakdown and the locations. It shows you the world.
Yeah.
Anyone else jump in? Sorry, I just leapt in there.
No, I think you covered it pretty comprehensively. Catherine jumped in just to respond to Ola to say Gorham Media, GORM, all caps, might be good for you to connect with when you get going. This comment is for the person who was writing in about Black people of colour in animation. Oh yeah, and someone else chimed in to say Limerick, though apparently Gorham are more live action. www.gorhammedia.com. And someone else chimed in to say Writer Duet, to recommend Writer Duet as I presume, a writing software. I'm not familiar with that one. Okay, 2 more questions and then I will let you go. How do you scout the right script editor for your project? No, don't all jump in.
I just don't want to. So it's usually
hold yourselves back, people.
Script editors are usually really in high demand. So if you're a script editor, there's usually great opportunities out there. I think one of the biggest things is if someone really.
This is for somebody looking for a script editor.
Okay, so someone who really connects with the material, someone who is available, who this will be their #1 project, and someone who is like, oh, this is why I'd love to work on this.
Okay, brilliant. And how would they find them?
They could look up script editors on LinkedIn.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, LinkedIn, I'd say.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I hate LinkedIn.
I know.
It loves you, Dee.
Oh, hate it so much.
Or if you're working with a company, if you're watching a cartoon, one of the things I want to say is this is the best homework in the world, the job we're in. You just get to watch cartoons. So if you see a cartoon you like, look at the credits, look at the team involved and go, oh, that script editor is working on all these shows. You know, and I think if you get funding from Screen Ireland, and everyone can tell me if I'm wrong, they have a bunch of script editors that they can recommend.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, and then hello everyone, I'm really enjoying the webinar. I'm currently working on an idea for an animated comedy adventure series aimed at kids, and I'm wondering, this is a good question, what should a pitch look like? And how would I go about writing and formatting something like that? Where can we direct them?
Ooh.
So yeah, I would say the simplest way to pitch it would be the best. So sometimes people think they have to have 5 pages, but if you can do it in a paragraph, if you can just sell the idea, like I want to know about spuds in space, you know, I'm like, tell me more. But if you can sell the idea in the simplest term, I recently was on a pitch session and they said, pitch the premise, not the plot. So
oh, very good. Sarah's
yeah, yeah. And that just for me was really good because it leaves you open for them to lean in and be really enthusiastic and go, tell me more. So you're just teasing it, saying this is what it is. So if you had like a paragraph version, you have a really good log line that says what it is. And then you might have like, you know, an extended 1-pager. But if you can sell it in the shortest possible way, I think that's the greatest hook.
I agree. No more than an A4, I would say. And what really strikes me is when I'm looking at, because people sometimes they definitely don't read all the information. If you can sum it up in a sentence, what your show's about, then you've really got that concept crystal clear. And, you know, because so many people try to put so much in it, but really get down to the core of what that show is about for your log line is what I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
And Dee, if you look at the log lines, if you look at IMDb, it usually gives a short summary. So you can see really good examples of what Peppa Pig is and what Bluey is. So if you go, oh, how do I use that format to adapt to my idea?
Yeah, that's super. I want to, just somebody has put in, I feel really hopeful and inspired by this webinar. Well, like, high praise. I want to adapt ancient Irish stories and folklore, and I hope that some of these funny and crazy stories will appeal to others besides myself. Thank you, everyone. I love that, and I can't wait to see them. Bobby, I want to finish up by turning to you for a moment. We're going to announce details of a couple of upcoming introductory writing courses, and you did a similar course a couple of years ago. And the course gives you a sense of the industry, though it isn't a springboard directly into work for everyone. Is there any advice or guidance you would have for someone applying to help them get the most out of it if they get a place?
Yeah, well, I'd say because a huge portion of the Irish animation industry is producing TV for younger viewers and preschool series and things like that. And the course does have a lot of focus on that kind of genre, as well as, you know, everything else. But I would say do a bit. I hadn't done as much homework on like series like that, so I knew Bluey quite well. But I'd advise, if you're going into the course, maybe do a bit of research into that world and, you know, watch an episode of an episode of Bluey, Hey Dougie, and the locally made shows as well, like Silly Sundays, Lou and the Bally Bunch, Ollie, those kind of things, to see what's being made in Ireland at the moment. But yeah, also remember that like all of the best kids writing, as far as I'm concerned, I think it takes inspiration from all sorts of other stuff, like different movies and different TV shows and books and radio dramas and things like that, not just other kids series. So I guess your aim going into to do something like this should be to channel like all of the different things that you love and that you've enjoyed throughout your life, and try to channel that into something that might be like palatable to smaller people. And in the course as well, it eventually leads to writing a spec script of an existing TV show. So it would probably be a good idea to start familiarizing yourself with like one show in particular. Like, so when we did that course, I think most of the people in the course did a spec script for Bluey, and there was a Paw Patrol, and there was a Hey Dougie, and maybe other ones. But yeah, I'd advise kind of immersing yourself in the world of one particular show in preparation for having to come up with an episode of that show.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bobby. Well said.
Yeah, and enjoy it, because it's a fantastic course, and you really will like get a lot out of it. And the other thing, I remember just before it started, I was a bit worried that maybe we were expected to have like a premise for our own show, and I had just kind of done kind of written all the scripts for the first series of Neera's class, and I had no like fresh ideas, and I was like, shit, I'm gonna be expected to like, you know, pitch a show or something on this in the course. But it's not like that at all, and you don't have to go in with your own kind of idea, but when you come out of it, you'll have lots of fresh ideas and fresh perspectives about all of the world of animation.
There you go.
Yes.
That's a wrap.
All right.
That's great. Is there anything else that we have left unsaid, do you think? No?
Just to say, it's such a wonderful place. It's a wonderful place to work. It's full of amazing people, and you get paid to watch cartoons and make cartoons.
How bad. I can't thank you enough. Sarah, Dina, Bobby, Lena, thank you all so much for your time and your expertise and those nuggets of gold. I can't wait to listen back and write them all down.
Oh, thank you very much, and happy writing, everyone.
Happy writing.
Thanks so much. Best of luck, everybody.
Yes, good luck.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and what I am going to do now towards the end is we're going to announce details of a couple of courses coming up. Well, we don't have the full details, but we're going to just talk a little bit about, I'm just trying to orientate myself so I have the info. Yeah, so there's going to be 2 writing programs announced in the coming weeks. One of them will be kind of, I suppose in a sense they're both based off this webinar. One of them, Flipping the Script, is an introductory course and mentoring scheme to writing for animation for diverse and disabled writers, and that will be run in conjunction with Cartoon Saloon. And then the other course is Turnip Duck's Listen Here Shadow Writers Program, which will be an introductory course and shadow writing scheme for blind and visually impaired writers, which will be run in tandem with production of their children's animation, Maddie and Triggs. Now, as part of the application for each course, you're going to be asked for a short personal statement. And we thought it would be a good idea for us to spend a couple of minutes, in case you're not used to writing a personal statement, to have a look at what personal statements are and what they mean. So pretend there's hold music playing while I find the document to share. Here we go. Okay. So hopefully you can see this. So a personal statement lets you tell us a little bit. So I'm reading from the document that I'm sharing right now. A personal statement lets you tell us a little bit about who you are without having to tick boxes or fit categories. Personal statements can vary, but in this context, we would like to know anything relevant to your application, including your background, any particular interests or experiences. So an example is when I have to fill out personal statements, when I'm doing funding applications, sometimes I have to fill out a personal statement, or when I'm applying for an opportunity or a course or a residency. So I might describe myself as autistic and a single parent. I might also say that I'm from Dunleary. I might say that I've written some short stories and I have a background in theatre. I might say my favorite story that I've written is about a dog who gets stuck in limbo when he dies because his owners tried to clone him. Someone else might describe themselves as a carer, maybe for their child or a parent or a family. Somebody else might be a member of the traveling community. Perhaps you have a disability, or you come from a migrant background. Perhaps you're dealing with housing instability. Whatever is important to you in your life at that time and is part of your identity is something that we're curious about knowing. Some of the things you could tell us, and I've put together just some questions that I'm going to read to kind of as a bit of a guide. So some things you could tell us are who you are, why you'd like to write for animation, and don't worry if you don't know, or if it's just something you want to try, that's fine. Do you feel underrepresented, and why? Have you written before? And if you have, what have you written? And it's fine if it's just for yourself. Are there any particular challenges you face? Are there any achievements, skills, or jobs you have or have had that you'd like to tell us about? And when you're writing the personal statement, you don't need to have a formal tone or use any specific kind of language. There'll be a word count. I can't remember how much it is. I think it's usually like 50 or 100 words. And within that, you can give us as much or as little information as you like. So that is on personal statement. Now I'm just going to check back into the questions. So let me see. Can you repeat the name of the animation course that was mentioned, please? So there's going to be two. There's going to be the Turnip and Duck, and I'll have to pull it up again. These will all be publicized, by the way. So let me just find my script. So Turnip and Duck's Listen Here Shadow Writers program is for blind and visually impaired writers. And then Flipping the Script, which is the same name as this webinar, is the course and mentoring scheme run in conjunction with Cartoon Saloon. The courses will be online. That was another question somebody asked, are these courses in person or online? They will be online. And somebody is asking, can you apply for both courses, or is it a one or the other? You can absolutely apply for both courses. And no, the course details are open for everybody, not just people who are registered today. Okay. And now the next thing that I would like to do is we have a couple of minutes left, and I would like to do just a little writing challenge, just to kind of whet your appetites a little bit for the courses. Now, if you want to, Sean is saying all courses in the chat. He's saying, I've lost the chat, of course, but he's saying all courses will be announced and publicized on our site, www.creativeskillnet.ie, and on our socials. So yeah, they will, and there'll be plenty of notice given about them as well. So we're going to do a really short writing challenge, okay? So what going to do is I'm going to attempt to share another document because it went so well the first time. So here we go now. So animation, I'm just reading from the document. Animation is all about telling stories, as we know. And it's really good to remember that the same story can be told an infinite number of ways by switching up the basic ingredients. So I thought we'd just try it. So the trick with this is not to think too hard. So step one, I'd like you, and I'm going to time it, I would like you to choose a fairy tale or simple children's story, just the first one that comes into your head, and just take a minute to remind yourself of the basic elements. A couple of sentences, that's all, just a beginning, a middle, and an end, all right? So I always think of Goldilocks, delinquent girl, breaks into bear's house, eats food, destroys furniture, falls asleep in the bed. So yeah, so just take 1 minute. I'm going to time, starting now. Okay, start finishing up. Okay, there we go. Now, step 2. Think of secondary characters to your story. So I thought of Goldilocks. And so Goldilocks secondary characters, you can make them up. So her godmother, because it's a fairy thing, so we'll give her a fairy godmother, a neighbor, and then the journalist reporting the story. And because Bobby has radio in my head, so we'll say it's a radio journalist reporting the story. So give yourself 30 seconds just on who those secondary characters might be. And finish up. Okay, now choose one of those characters and give them the following. Give them a hobby. So playing the ukulele, like, would be one I would give them. A limitation. So my character doesn't like getting wet. An interest. My character likes counting the letter E in sentences. A sidekick, an aloe vera plant called Spike. And I find with something like this, like a handy trick is to mash traits of people that you know. So take those things and then retell the children's story. So the original story from this character's point of view and see where it takes you. It says 5 minutes, but we won't do 5 minutes. Let's say 3 minutes. Just even have a little daydream about that and see if anything comes to mind. Okay, 3 minutes. And if you have anything you want to share in the chat, you can. Like if there's any ideas you have. Okay. And start finishing up. Now, maybe you had nothing. I kind of ended up with this really sort of weird thing about a kind of a, I don't know, it was like a radio DJ, and he had a late night show with his aloe vera sidekick, and he kept getting this phone call from a bear. Anyway, it turned out that it was a haunted house. So I had this kind of ghost story thing because the girl was breaking into the house, but actually the house for her was her house, but or maybe it was like an interdimensional thing, but it was the bear's house, but she thought it was her house, but it was actually the bear's house. And the radio DJ is, or he's not a DJ, like the journalist guy is trying to get to the bottom of it. Anyway, that's what I came up with. Let me see if there are any more questions. And no, there aren't. That's it. Thank you all so much for being a part of our event this evening. I hope it was useful. I hope it was helpful. I hope you come away inspired. I hope that there at the end that you saw that story is something that is really malleable, with lots of different elements that can be moved around and changed as much as are needed. I hope that, somebody, hang on, questions. When will the courses be announced? I suppose they'll be announced in the next couple of weeks. And yes, we'll try and get the exercise out to you in bullet points. The courses, so the courses will be announced in the next couple of weeks. And as we said earlier, they're going to be built on what we covered this evening. We're really, really keen to get as many voices into animation and into the animation industry as possible. And that's why we're so grateful to all our speakers tonight for being so generous with their time and their talent. And thank you all so much for joining us. And it's brilliant. And have a wonderful 2024. And I really look forward to crossing paths with some of you, I hope, in the weeks and months to come. Thanks a million. Bye.